Wyoming. It has natural beauty, bison, celebrities, and a massive volcano that could immediately end the lives of 90,000 people if it erupted. Then of course the survivors would be left to fend for themselves in a dark, dusty, post-apocalyptic hellscape, fighting each other for resources as many succumb to hunger, or are taken out by fellow desperate survivors who will do anything for the next meal. I hope everyone's doing well. Today I'll be talking about the Yellowstone supervolcano, otherwise known as the Yellowstone Plateau Volcanic Field, and more importantly, what would happen if it erupted again? It would be bad. Situated mostly in northwestern Wyoming, Yellowstone became the first national park in the world on March 1, 1872. At 2.2 million acres, it's massive, and includes undisturbed nature, wildlife, and geothermal areas that contain about half the world's active geysers. Scientists used to think that the heat in these geothermal areas came from an extinct volcano under the park that died long before the last ice age. Then on August 17, 1959, a major earthquake caused scientists to reconsider this hypothesis. The magnitude 7.5 earthquake caused a landslide at Hebgen Lake, west of the park. 80 million tons of rock broke off of a mountain and crashed down onto a campsite, killing 28 campers, 19 of which were never found. This event caused geologists to install seismometers throughout the park to monitor earthquake activity, in hopes of avoiding another tragedy. After looking at the data from these seismometers, geologists found that the park averaged over 25 earthquakes per week, making it the most seismically active area in America, outside of California. Geologists were unsure why, so they commissioned a large study of the area. In the process of this investigation, they discovered that a thick layer of ash and debris covered the bedrock throughout the park, and that this must have come from a massive volcanic eruption, far more massive than anything possible from the previously theorized extinct volcano under the park. Scientists determined that all of this material would have been ejected at the same time, and at a volume of about 250 cubic miles, enough to bury all of Texas under 5 feet of ash. This raised the question, where is this volcano? There was no classic cone-shaped volcano in the park. For 5 years the park was surveyed, and it was eventually determined that the volcano was a massive crater, or caldera. A caldera is formed when the pressure in a volcano's magma chamber becomes too great, which causes an eruption, and the ground above to sink into the now partially empty magma chamber. The size of this first caldera they discovered at Yellowstone was estimated to be approximately 50 miles long by 25 miles across. So how big was this eruption at Yellowstone? For context, the most devastating volcanic eruption in living memory, in the United States at least, was the eruption of Mount St. Helens on May 18, 1980. The eruption was equivalent to 500 Hiroshima nuclear bombs and blasted 7 billion tons of rock from the side of the mountain. It flattened an area of forest 3 times the size of Washington, D.C., and sent ash 15 miles into the sky. The eruption that caused the Yellowstone caldera was approximately 1,000 times greater than the 1980 Mount St. Helens eruption. The crazy thing is, I'm only talking about one of the eruptions for which evidence was found. After further analysis of the layers of ash at Yellowstone, it was determined that there were 2 other massive eruptions. One was even larger than the first one that they discovered, and the resulting caldera measured 60 miles long by 30 miles wide. The eruption that caused it was 2,500 times the size of the eruption of Mount St. Helens. Ultimately, it was determined that there were 3 eruptions at Yellowstone National Park. The first occurred 2.1 million years ago, the second occurred 1.3 million years ago, and the third and most recent occurred 631,000 years ago. According to USGS.gov, the Yellowstone supervolcano has a recurrence interval of about 600,000 to 800,000 years, meaning that it erupts about every 600,000 to 800,000 years, which is mildly concerning because it erupted about 631,000 years ago, and yes, it is still active. So what would happen if it erupted in our lifetimes? For starters, it would be the biggest explosion in the history of mankind. The largest bomb ever detonated was the Tsar bomb. Detonated on October 30th, 1961, the blast yield was about 50 megatons of TNT. The Yellowstone supervolcano would produce a blast about 17,500 times bigger than that. Upon eruption, lava flows would engulf everything within 40 miles from the epicenter, and about 250 cubic miles of material would be ejected miles into the sky. And of course, nothing and no one within 60 miles of the initial blast would survive. Then comes the pyroclastic flow, a fast-moving current of hot gas and volcanic matter. This would spread a layer of molten ash, fragmented magma, incandescent gases, and tumbling rocks at temperatures as high as 1500 degrees Fahrenheit at hurricane velocities in all directions from its epicenter. If those in the path of the pyroclastic flow were not taken out by the scorching debris, then they would be taken out by inhaling the hot gases, which would scorch their lungs and throats instantaneously. After that, the water in their tissues would be boiled off. There have even been remains found of humans who were in the path of pyroclastic flows, whose skulls had popped apart because their brains exploded. From the ejection of materials, an enormous cloud would rise and spread in all directions, covering the continental United States, and toxic volcanic ash would rain down. Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Colorado, and Utah would be almost completely buried under a layer of hot volcanic ash, as deep as over 3 feet, causing many roofs to collapse. Denver, Salt Lake City, and Boise would be severely damaged or destroyed. Across the Midwest, Nevada, and southern Alberta, there would be inches of ash coating everything. And as far as the Atlantic and Pacific coasts, there would be a dusting of ash, depending on weather patterns. The ash would clog filters in cars and engines of airplanes, causing travel to come to a halt, as well as any planes flying at the time to fall out of the sky. Moist ash would collect on power lines, causing insulators to short, resulting in widespread power outages. The ash would collect in rivers, causing giant mud flows which would smash everything in their path. Pumping stations at reservoirs would be clogged, leaving many without fresh water, and nuclear power stations dependent on cooling water from rivers would be forced to close. Not to mention, the ash would be deadly if inhaled. Next comes the nuclear winter. The gases released from the volcano into the atmosphere would mix with water vapor, causing a haze that would block out sunlight and lower temperatures across the US and other parts of the world. This would result in a decimation of crops, which would in turn cause livestock to starve, leaving us with limited supplies of produce and meat. Basically lots of destruction, people losing their lives, mass chaos. It'll be terrible. Luckily, the Yellowstone supervolcano will not erupt without warning. There will be swarms of strong earthquakes and rapid ground deformation days to weeks before the eruption, giving people in the immediate blast radius and the path of the pyroclastic flow enough time to evacuate. What you're probably all wondering is this volcano going to erupt anytime soon? Luckily, according to scientists, it is very unlikely to erupt anytime soon, and also luckily, we have a lot of scientists monitoring it. I suggest you just stop thinking about it. There's really not much you can do. Sorry I brought it up. Thanks for watching.